Admiral Vrij stood at the edge of the command deck, his six golden eyes locked onto the swirling chaos outside the flagship's massive viewport. The void between the stars had turned into a graveyard. Dozens of shattered ships, once proud vessels of the Galactic Empire, drifted silently, their wreckage a horrifying testament to the battle unfolding around them. Vrij gritted his teeth. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. The humans were supposed to be an easy conquest, a footnote in the Empire's long history of dominations. Yet here they were, fighting like demons out of legend. "Status report," he barked, his voice echoing harshly across the bridge. "Admiral, we've lost the 7th, 8th, and 12th Assault Squadrons," the tactical officer stammered, his scales paling from emerald green to sickly white. "Enemy forces are regrouping near the orbital debris field." "That's impossible," Vrij slammed his fist into the command rail. "They shouldn't have the strength left to regroup." The officer hesitated, then swallowed hard. "Sir, there's something else." Vrij whipped around, "Out with it." The bridge fell into a tense silence. Every officer on board could feel it, that creeping sensation of doom, thick and suffocating like smoke. "We intercepted a human transmission," the officer said at last, voice shaking. Their admiral was heard saying, "Our main fleet hasn't even entered the battlefield yet." For a moment Vrij thought he misheard. He blinked slowly, his mind struggling to wrap itself around the words. The humans hadn't committed their full strength, they were fighting back this viciously with only a fraction of their forces. A cold, alien fear gripped his heart. "No," he whispered, "that can't be right." But deep down he knew it was. The signs were all there, the brutal hit-and-run tactics, the ferocity of their pilots, the unrelenting way they fought for every inch of space. These weren't the desperate acts of a cornered prey, these were the calculated maneuvers of a predator, one that had been playing the Empire for fools. "Order the fleet to pull back," Vrij growled, his voice low and deadly. "Now?" The helmsman hesitated. "Sir, if we retreat now it will look like cowardice." "The Council." "To the void with the Council," Vrij roared. "You haven't seen what I've seen today. The humans, they're not fighting to survive, they're fighting to win." Before the helmsman could respond, alarms screamed across the bridge. A new formation of human ships had just dropped out of hyperspace, sleek, black vessels bristling with weapons that made even the Empire's most advanced cruisers look outdated and slow. The tactical officer gasped, "Sir, new contacts 70 no 100 ships." Another burst of static-filled transmission cut across the bridge speakers. "This is Admiral Cole of the United Terran Forces," a calm, steel-edged voice said. "To the invading forces of the so-called Galactic Empire, you are ordered to surrender immediately. You have one chance." Vrij felt his knees buckle. He caught himself on the railing, breathing hard. Around him, the bridge crew stood frozen, terror written across every face. They had underestimated humanity. They had thought Earth was a backwater world, weak and primitive. They hadn't understood that humans were something far more dangerous. They were survivors, they were warriors, and they were just getting started. The bridge lights dimmed to blood red as the ship's emergency protocols kicked in. Vrij barely registered the flashing warnings, his mind spinning too fast, trapped between disbelief and raw fear. He turned back to the viewport, staring out at the human fleet now surrounding them like a noose tightening around the Empire's throat. Their ships moved with terrifying precision, a silent, coordinated dance of death. "Raise shields to maximum and prepare to break through their lines," Vrij barked, but his voice cracked halfway through. The crew scrambled, but everyone knew it was futile. These humans weren't just better armed, they were smarter, faster, and utterly merciless. In the span of hours, they had done what no other species had ever managed. They had broken the spirit of the undefeated galactic forces. Vrij clenched his claws against the railing. He couldn't accept this. They were the Empire. They were supposed to be the masters of the galaxy, not humiliated by a species barely 3 centuries into space flight. A junior officer, voice trembling, said, "Sir, incoming transmission again." "Put it through," Vrij said, his mouth dry. Admiral Cole's face appeared on the main screen, a man in his late 40s with cold gray eyes and a scar running down his cheek. His expression was calm, almost bored, like he was addressing an insect. "This is your final warning," Cole said. "Surrender, there will be no negotiations after this." The transmission ended abruptly, giving no time for reply. Vrij drew a long, ragged breath. In the silence that followed, he could hear the whispered prayers of his bridge crew, each muttering in their own language. Desperation hung in the air like a heavy fog. "Enemy movements detected," the tactical officer cried out. "They're preparing to fire." "All ships defensive formation Omega," Vrij shouted. "If we can punch through the left flank, we might." Before he could finish, a series of bright blue flashes erupted across the human fleet. Their weapons fired in perfect synchronization, a relentless calculated barrage that tore into the Empire's ships with surgical precision. Vries watched in horror as three cruisers simply vanished from the sensors, torn apart in seconds. The Empire's defensive lines collapsed like wet paper. Screams filled the bridge as more ships reported catastrophic damage or went silent altogether. "Sir, our left flank is gone," someone cried. Vries squeezed his eyes shut for half a heartbeat, trying to think. There had to be a way out, there always was. "Signal all remaining forces," he growled. "Prepare for emergency hyperspace jump, get us out of here." "But sir—" "Do it," Vries roared, slamming his fist against the control panel hard enough to crack it. The helmsman scrambled to comply, entering the emergency jump coordinates. Just as he confirmed the jump sequence, another alarm blared, harsher, sharper than before. "Human ships are jamming our hyperspace drives," the engineer shrieked. "We can't jump." The words hit Vries like a physical blow. His legs gave out and he stumbled back into his command chair, staring blankly at the screen. Trapped. They were trapped. He looked again at the human fleet, now slowly advancing on them like hunters closing in for the kill. Vries realized with a sickening certainty that they weren't just going to lose this battle, they were about to be erased. Not a surrender, not an occupation, total annihilation. The humans hadn't just come to defend their world, they had come to end the Empire. He had no choice left. Swallowing the bitter acid of defeat, Vries opened a transmission to Admiral Cole. "This is Admiral Vries of the Galactic Empire," he said, voice broken. We surrender." The screen flickered to life again, showing Cole once more. The human admiral gave a small, cold smile that held no mercy at all. "You had your chance," he said. "Now you live or die on our terms." The screen went black. Vries slumped in his chair, feeling the weight of centuries crash down on his shoulders. Around him, the bridge crew sat in stunned silence, the mighty empire reduced to nothing more than a cautionary tale for the history books. They had thought themselves invincible. They had thought humanity was weak. They had been wrong, so terribly, fatally wrong. The lights on the command deck flickered as the human ships pressed closer, their weapons hot and ready. A few desperate ships in the Imperial fleet tried to break away, engines screaming against the jamming fields, but one by one they were picked off like insects under a magnifying glass. Explosions painted the blackness of space with ugly orange blossoms. Vries sat motionless, watching the slaughter unfold. In all his years of conquest, he had never seen anything like this, an enemy that not only outmatched them but showed no hesitation in crushing them utterly. No quarter given, no hesitation, no mercy. The humans fought as if they had a personal grudge against the very idea of the Empire existing. He gritted his teeth, the taste of blood sharp in his mouth. This wasn't a war anymore, it was an execution. A soft beep sounded on the command chair's console, private channel incoming. Vries leaned forward and accepted the transmission, expecting another ultimatum. Instead, Admiral Cole's voice came through, calm and cold. "Listen carefully, Vries," Cole said. "You have exactly 10 minutes to order your fleet to stand down and evacuate all surviving personnel from the ships. Any vessel that fails to comply will be destroyed. There are no negotiations, no treaties, no mercy, understand?" Vries hesitated, pride screaming inside him to resist, but reality crushed it swiftly. They had already lost. Further resistance would only spill more Imperial blood for nothing. He pressed the transmission button and spoke in a voice that no longer sounded like his own. "Understood." When the line cut, Vries slumped back again, the fire inside him extinguished. He turned to his shattered bridge crew. "Order all surviving units to power down weapons, lower shields, and prepare evacuation pods," he said. "Inform them, we have surrendered." The crew moved without question. Orders were relayed, ships powered down, and thousands of small escape pods began launching from the Imperial ships, drifting slowly toward a neutral zone established by the humans. Vries watched as his mighty fleet, the pride of the Empire, scattered like dying embers into the void. The humiliation was unbearable. Every second felt like a knife twisting in his gut. Yet the humans did not fire, they let the escape pods drift safely. They had won. They knew it, and they wanted the Empire to witness their mercy as much as their wrath. It was a statement, one that Vries understood all too clearly. You are broken, you are conquered, and you are allowed to live only because we permit it. Vries rose slowly from his command chair, his legs unsteady. His ship, the Imperial dreadnought Velkar, would be boarded soon. He could already see the human assault craft docking along the hull, their sharp black bodies like the teeth of a predator ready to rip apart what little was left. He took a long last look at the bridge, memorizing every detail. The cracked control panels, the dead crewmen slumped over their stations, the thin smoke rising from shattered consoles. This was the end of an era. The doors at the rear of the bridge hissed open and human soldiers poured in, weapons raised, faces hidden behind expressionless helmets. "Hands where we can see them," one barked. Vries raised his hands slowly, feeling the heavy gaze of every soldier on him. He was just another prisoner now, no longer Admiral Vries of the Galactic Empire, just a defeated relic of a dead regime. As he was roughly shackled and led away, he caught one final glimpse of the viewport. Outside, the human fleet floated like a steel storm over the broken remains of his armada. The Empire had come to Earth expecting slaves. Instead, they had found monsters. And Vries knew with a deep and terrible certainty that the galaxy itself would never be the same again. The walk down the ruined halls of the Velkar felt endless, each step echoed with the shame Vries carried like a chain around his neck. The human soldiers flanked him on both sides, their weapons always trained, their movements sharp and professional. They didn't jeer, didn't speak, didn't even glance at him with the contempt he might have expected. It was almost worse, he wasn't even worth their hatred, just another defeated enemy to be processed and forgotten. They led him to one of the drop shuttles docked on the hull. As he was forced inside, Vries caught a glimpse of the other prisoners. Imperial officers, ship captains, soldiers, all stripped of their weapons, helmets abandoned, faces pale and hollow. These were the finest the Empire had produced, now sitting quietly like cattle awaiting slaughter. The shuttle doors sealed shut with a hiss, and a low hum filled the chamber as it detached from the Velkar. Through the small, reinforced window, Vries could see the massive human flagship growing closer. It was an ugly ship, brutal and utilitarian, without the sleek grandeur of Imperial designs, but every inch of it radiated strength and menace, a floating fortress made for one purpose: war. The shuttle docked, and one by one they were herded out. No words were spoken. Vries stumbled a bit as he stepped onto the cold metal floor of the human ship. The air smelled different, harsh, industrial, full of oil and ozone. It was a smell of machinery and sweat, not ceremony and empire. They were marched through a labyrinth of corridors until they arrived at a massive holding bay. Hundreds of prisoners already filled the space, surrounded by heavily armed guards. A thick, invisible weight hung over everything, the undeniable knowledge that their fates were no longer their own. Vries was pushed into the line and left standing. For a while he just stared at the floor, lost in the swirling storm of his thoughts. Then a low murmur rippled through the crowd. He looked up. Standing on a raised platform at the far end of the bay was Admiral Cole, flanked by several human officers. He wasn't dressed in ceremonial garb or some ridiculous victor's robe, no medals gleamed on his chest. He wore a simple, worn black uniform, practical, efficient, deadly. Cole stepped forward and surveyed the gathered prisoners, his gray eyes as cold as deep space. "You thought we were weak," he began, voice carrying easily across the bay. "You thought humanity would kneel." Vries felt the sting of the words, felt them strike the hearts of everyone present. There was no anger in Cole's tone, no boastfulness, just a simple, brutal truth. "You didn't understand us," Cole continued. "You thought because we were fractured, because we fought amongst ourselves, that we were easy prey. You mistook our chaos for weakness, our divisions for frailty." Human Admiral leaned in slightly, voice dropping into a tone that made the hair along Vries's neck rise. "You failed to see what every tyrant before you has learned the hard way, that nothing unites humanity faster than an enemy who tries to break us." Silence hung thick after his words. Cole straightened again, hands clasped behind his back. "You are no longer soldiers, you are no longer rulers, you are prisoners of war. Your fate will be decided by the United Terran Tribunal, and believe me, Earth does not forget." He turned sharply and marched away, the heavy doors at the rear of the bay hissing closed behind him. For a long moment no one moved, no one spoke. Vries stared after him, a hollow pit opening in his chest. He understood now why the Empire had lost. The humans hadn't just been fighting for survival, they had been fighting for revenge, for dignity, for every insult and every threat the Empire had ever thrown at them. And they had fought like only humans could, with every ounce of fury, stubbornness, and savagery in their blood. Vries slumped back against the cold wall of the holding bay, the final pieces of his pride crumbling to dust. They hadn't just underestimated Earth, they had awakened it, and the galaxy would bleed for it. The hours dragged by in the holding bay, a heavy silence pressing down on everyone. Some of the captured officers huddled together in small groups, whispering in broken voices, clinging to scraps of hope. Others just sat alone, staring into nothing, their minds adrift somewhere far from this cold, metallic prison. Vries stayed where he was, slumped against the wall, watching, listening, trying to piece together what little information he could. He learned fast that the humans had moved with terrifying efficiency after the battle. Every Imperial ship that surrendered was boarded within minutes, every officer catalogued, every database ripped apart. There would be no opportunity for a second resistance, no chance to rally and fight again. The humans hadn't just defeated them on the battlefield, they were ripping the Empire out by its roots. A harsh klaxon blared overhead, jolting everyone to their feet. The prisoners were ordered into rows, hands behind their heads, as heavily armed soldiers stormed the bay again. This time they weren't just here to guard, they were here to select. Vries tensed as soldiers moved down the rows, stopping at intervals, tagging certain prisoners and pulling them away. No explanations were given, no pattern was obvious. Some were high-ranking officers, others were lowly deckhands. The selection seemed almost random, but the fear it spread was surgical, calculated. When they reached him, a human soldier paused. Their visor hid their expression, but there was a hesitation there, almost like they recognized him. Then the soldier raised a scanner, its green beam sweeping across Vries's face. Admiral Vries, a mechanical voice confirmed from the device. The soldier tapped something on their wrist pad. Two more humans appeared instantly, gripping Vries by the arms and dragging him out of line. He didn't struggle, there was no point. They led him through more twisting corridors until they reached a small interrogation room, Spartan, clinical, a table and two chairs bolted to the floor. A single camera blinked in one corner. Vries was shoved into a chair, his bindings secured to the tabletop. The soldiers left without a word, the door locking behind them with a final, decisive hiss. He sat there for what felt like hours, the cold metal seeping into his bones. His mind wandered in dark circles, memories of glorious battles, of victory parades on the home world, of the Emperor's proud voice declaring the Empire's destiny among the stars. All of it ashes now. The door finally opened. Admiral Cole walked in alone, a data pad in one hand. He didn't sit, he just stood there, looking down at Vries like one might study a dangerous animal trapped behind glass. Vries, Cole said, voice flat. Architect of the Imperial Northern Campaign, executive of the Alari massacres, slayer of the Venturi colonies. Each title was spoken like a blade being twisted in Vries's gut. You built your reputation on crushing the weak, Cole continued, his eyes narrowing, on conquering civilizations that couldn't fight back. You carved out your legacy in blood and ash, and you thought Earth would be another name on your list. Vries said nothing, there was nothing left to say. Cole leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to a low, almost conversational tone. Here's the thing you never understood, he said. Weakness isn't our curse, it's our weapon. It's what makes us dangerous because when we're pushed, when we're desperate, we don't break. He tapped the data pad and a hologram flared to life between them. It showed footage of Earth cities after the Empire's first strikes. Burning ruins, crying children, people digging survivors out of rubble with their bare hands. You showed us no mercy, Cole said quietly. And now we will show you what humanity does when it has nothing left to lose. He turned off the hologram and tossed the data pad onto the table, where it slid to a stop in front of Vries. You're going to tell us everything, Cole said. Fleet movements, base locations, supply routes. You're going to help us tear your empire apart from the inside. Vries finally lifted his head, meeting Cole's icy gaze. And if I refuse, he rasped. Cole smiled, not a kind smile, not a human smile. If you refuse, he said, we won't kill you. He leaned closer, his voice a low, deadly whisper. We'll send you back alive, broken, so your people can see what happens to those who think they can stand against Earth. For the first time since his capture, true terror stabbed through Vries's heart, not for himself, for the Empire. Because he knew now the humans weren't fighting for survival anymore, they were fighting for vengeance. And they were very, very good at it. Vries stared at the data pad like it was a bomb about to go off. His hands, shackled to the table, trembled slightly, though he willed them still. Around him, the air felt thick, charged, like the moment before a storm tears the sky open. He had been interrogated before, had even ordered the interrogations of others, but never like this, never with so much weight pressing down. It wasn't just about extracting information, it was about crushing his will entirely, making him a symbol of total defeat. Cole remained silent, giving Vries the space to stew in his own fear. It was a tactic, of course. Humans were masters of pressure. They didn't scream, didn't torture, not like the Empire had done to its enemies. No, they let you destroy yourself from the inside out. Minutes dragged into hours. No food, no water, no sleep. The walls seemed to close in, and Vries found himself remembering things he hadn't thought of in decades. The first colony he helped burn, the shrieks of the Alari children echoing through the smoke. He had once been proud of those victories, had worn them like badges of honor. Now they clung to him like chains made of rotting flesh. Cole returned eventually, stepping through the door with a quiet, measured tread. He didn't speak right away, just set down another data pad, this one showing detailed schematics of Imperial space stations, fleet rosters, personnel files. You see, Cole said calmly, we already know a lot thanks to the crews who surrendered willingly, thanks to the colonies you abandoned during your retreat. The only thing we're missing is confirmation. He slid the data pad closer with one finger, the scrape of metal on metal making Vries flinch. And you, Admiral, are going to confirm it, not for us, for history. Vries said nothing. He focused on breathing, trying to summon the reserves of defiance that had carried him through 1,000 battles, but they were paper-thin now, crumbling against the weight of what he had seen, what he had lost. Your empire abandoned you the moment we broke your fleet, Cole said, his voice almost gentle. You know that, don't you? No reinforcements, no desperate last charge, no rescue ships slipping through the blockade. They left you to rot. Vries opened his mouth to argue to deny it, but the words wouldn't come because it was true. The Empire had left him behind without a second thought. He was nothing to them now, disposable, forgotten. Help us, Cole said, tell us everything, you might just survive this. Vries laughed then, a dry, broken sound, bitter and small. Survival as what? A pet, a prisoner trotted out for propaganda films, a living trophy. He had survived countless battles, entire worlds burning behind him, but this was something else. Survival here meant becoming a ghost of himself, a living reminder of the Empire's failure. Yet when he thought about the alternative, being paraded back to his home world, shattered and defeated for all to see, the choice became simpler. It wasn't about honor anymore. That had been stripped from him the moment Earth's fleets had torn his empire apart like paper. It was about vengeance, not against humanity, no, they had earned their victory. It was against the Empire that had used him and discarded him. Slowly, painfully, Vries leaned forward. What do you want to know? He said, his voice broken but steady. Cole didn't smile, didn't gloat. He just nodded once, sharply, like a general accepting the surrender of a worthy opponent. Everything, Cole said, and so Vries spoke. He spoke of hidden supply caches in dead systems. He spoke of secret bases buried under the moons of forgotten worlds. He gave them fleet schedules, troop deployments, the names of imperial governors who would fold like wet paper at the first sign of human fleets. He gave them the Empire's blood. Every word he spoke was a knife in his own soul, but he did it anyway because vengeance burned hotter than pride. And as he talked, he could see the future unfold behind Cole's eyes. A future where Earth rose not just as a survivor but as a new and terrible power in the galaxy, a future where the Empire would be nothing but a cautionary tale whispered in fear. Vries spoke until his throat was raw, until his voice was a whisper, and still Cole listened, still Earth plotted its next move. Because this wasn't the end, it was just the beginning. When the last detail slipped from Vries's lips, he slumped back in his chair, exhausted beyond anything he'd ever felt. His head throbbed, his vision blurred, but there was a strange, hollow relief in the surrender. He had nothing left to give, no more lies to tell, no pride left to defend. Across the table, Admiral Cole powered off the recorder and stood silently for a moment, studying him. The coldness was still there, but there was something else now, too, a flicker of grim respect. Not forgiveness, never forgiveness, but a quiet acknowledgement between two soldiers who knew the cost of war all too well. You did the right thing, Cole said simply. Vries laughed, a dry, broken sound. Right thing for whom? Cole didn't answer, he didn't have to. The door hissed open and two human guards stepped in. They unlocked Vries's bindings, roughly hauling him to his feet. His legs barely worked, but they dragged him along without ceremony. The walk this time was different, not through the corridors of the prison decks. No, this time they moved deeper into the bowels of the human flagship, past hangar bays teeming with new fleets being prepared, past rows of engineers outfitting sleek, deadly ships with weapons that made Imperial tech look like relics. Earth wasn't just fighting to survive anymore, they were preparing to expand. And Vries knew deep in his gut that nothing in the galaxy would stop them now. Finally, they reached a small chamber sealed by heavy blast doors. Inside, a single shuttle waited, powered up and ready. Vries recognized the model, a basic long-range diplomatic vessel, unarmed, lightly shielded. It wouldn't stand a chance against military craft, but it wasn't meant for battle. It was meant for humiliation. Admiral Cole stood by the ramp, arms folded behind his back. We're sending you back to the Empire, he said. You'll be allowed to land on your home world. No weapons, no defenses, just you. Vries stared at him, cold realization sinking in. You want them to see what's left of me, he rasped. Cole nodded once. You're the first stone, the warning shot, a reminder to your people of what's coming. Vries closed his eyes for a long moment. There was no escape from this, no redemption, only the slow unraveling of everything he had ever believed in. You could just kill me, he said quietly. Cole's face hardened. That would be mercy. Without another word, the guards pushed him forward. He stumbled up the ramp into the shuttle, the doors hissing closed behind him. The ship rumbled to life, autopilot engaging as it disconnected from the docking clamps. Through the tiny viewport, Vries watched the human flagship drift away, its shadow swallowing stars as the shuttle accelerated into the vast emptiness. Vries slumped into the pilot's chair and stared blankly ahead. His home world lay ahead waiting, but he would not return as a hero. He would return as a ghost, a living corpse. And behind him, rising from the ruins of war, humanity, brutal, vengeful, unbreakable, would march across the stars. They had shown the galaxy their weakness once, now they would show it their teeth. The journey through hyperspace was a blur of cold silence. No one spoke to him, no voices crackled through the comms. The ship was locked on autopilot, programmed with a single destination, the Imperial Throne world. Vries sat alone in the pilot's seat, watching the shifting colors of the void slip past the viewport. Time lost all meaning, minutes, hours, days, it didn't matter anymore. Every breath he took felt heavier, a reminder of the shame he carried like armor made of rot. When the shuttle finally dropped out of hyperspace, the sight of his home world hit him like a punch to the gut. There it was, the jewel of the Empire, gleaming cities sprawled across continents, massive orbital stations hanging like silver crowns above the atmosphere, fleets of sleek Imperial warships patrolling proudly in orbit. It should have stirred pride in him, once it would have. Now it only made the hollow inside him ache deeper. The Imperial control towers hailed the shuttle immediately, their voices sharp with suspicion. Unidentified vessel, transmit identification codes and purpose. The ship answered for him automatically, broadcasting his name, rank, and the diplomatic override codes built into the shuttle's systems. Silence followed for several seconds, then another voice, colder and clipped, came through. Proceed to docking platform 6, do not deviate. Vries set his jaw and obeyed, not that he had a choice. As the shuttle descended, he could already see the crowds gathering at the spaceport below, hundreds, maybe thousands, officials, soldiers, civilians. News drones hovered above like metal vultures, capturing every moment for the Empire's propaganda networks. They didn't know yet, they didn't understand what was about to walk off that shuttle. The landing gear struck the platform with a heavy thud, the engines whining down to silence. The ramp lowered slowly, creaking against the platform's polished surface. Vries stood, smoothing the battered remnants of his uniform, no insignia, no weapon, only a tattered shadow of the admiral he had once been. He stepped into the light. For a heartbeat, the crowd was silent, staring in confused awe. Cameras flashed. Soldiers stood at attention, saluting sharply. And then someone gasped. Another whisper rippled through the crowd, a tide of horror. They saw the hollowness in his eyes, the way he staggered slightly as he walked. They saw the absence of an escort, the lack of any triumph, any ceremony. They saw the thin, mocking grin that curled across his lips, the broken pride he didn't even try to hide. Whispers turned to shouts, shouts turned to screams. Where is the fleet? Where are our heroes? What happened? Questions hurled at him like stones, but Vries said nothing. He walked down the ramp with slow, measured steps, each one hammering another nail into the coffin of the Empire's myth of invincibility. An official rushed forward, trying to take control of the scene, trying to salvage the narrative, but it was too late. The people saw the truth written on Vries's body, the tremor in his hands, the exhaustion in his bones, the ruin in his eyes. The Empire wasn't safe. The Empire wasn't eternal. The Empire had fallen. It just didn't know it yet. Behind Vries, in the cold, endless void of space, humanity gathered its fleets, built its war machines, sharpened its knives. Earth had been attacked, Earth had bled, and now Earth would conquer. As Vries reached the edge of the platform, he paused, turning slightly towards the stunned crowds, the flashing cameras, the crumbling faces of once-proud officials. He raised his head high, not in defiance but in finality. "They're coming," he said, his voice low but carrying like a funeral bell. "And there will be no mercy." The silence that followed was heavier than any bomb. Vries let the words hang in the air, a prophecy written not in hope but in blood. Then he turned and walked into the heart of the doomed empire, a broken man bearing the banner of humanity's vengeance. The war wasn't over, it was just beginning. And this time the galaxy itself would bleed.